Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. 497 clients tell you what they really want from accounting firms. I'm really excited to be joined today by Darreon, our Director of Analytics and Research. We'll get things started in about 60 seconds, but I want to give people a chance to get into their seats. I'm seeing some familiar names and thrilled to have you all join. And hopefully we'll be able to give a little bit of insight into our latest research and what we think it means. We always learn as much from you all as you learn from us. So, don't be afraid to be active in the chat, ask each other questions, ask us questions, and we can go through there. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We are recording this, so you will get a copy of this deck. You will also have access to the ability to see the recording. We'll have that out to you as well. And we have a QR code coming up in just a couple slides that will share the research itself with you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Again, if you have questions in the chat, I think Darreon and I switched it up a little bit, Ryan, this time. So I see the first chat was whether or not we were going to dress the same. And Darreon's tastes have evolved. Mine have stayed the same. So much to your chagrin, we are not dressed the same on this one, but we do think with a sort of data geek mind. So
next time, Eric, next time.
That's right. Yeah, we can coordinate. So I want to just give a 2-minute highlight of ClearlyRated. Most of you on this call know us. Some of you know us well. We are the accounting industry's leading provider of client experience surveys. Our platform powers over 100 accounting firm survey programs. As part of that, we try to really give back to the industry, always educating ourselves and educating you all. We believe that this community continues to grow and innovate around how we can utilize CX data to help differentiate and grow your firms. And that's really the purpose of this research here. I wanted to take a second to thank the Association for Accounting Marketing. They are the sponsor of our research this year, and we have about a decade-long partnership with them in a variety of different ways. This is the first year that they've really sponsored this research, and we just could not be happier. The leadership over there and that organization is so committed to adding value for marketers and business developers in the space, and we're just really excited to be a part of that. I also wanted to kind of talk a little bit about what this research is going to do and your ability to get the actual research. So the way that we have set this up is, I asked Darreon to go through and kind of highlight a couple things from the report and basically do a readout of the report. And so giving you a little bit of the color commentary to what you could actually get on this report. You can see the QR code. You can download it directly there, get the full access to this report. You're going to see a lot of the things covered in here about the same as what you would see on that report. And so one of the most important things that I always try to encourage people is understand the data source and understand where the data comes from, because so often we make really important decisions based on research and we sort of just assume that research is credible. And so I know Darreon is kind of the keeper of credibility on our studies here internally. So with that, I would like to introduce him. Darreon is our head of analytics and research. Has worked in this space with us for well over a decade, and is really one of the leading thoughts and brains around client experience data and some of the trends that he's been helping us mark really for that entire time that he's been here. So there's really nobody better. Nobody knows this research better than he does. And that was why I really wanted to have him join me and talk through that from the analytics side. So what you'll hear a lot of is him telling you what's in the research, what's in the report, and why he thinks it matters. And then me giving maybe a little bit of the color commentary on what we're seeing and things that stood out there. So without further ado, Darreon, why don't you kind of take us through the research methodology, some of the demographics, and kind of jump through what people can expect today.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the intro, Eric. And wow, no pressure, right? Nobody knows this data better, I guess. I'll take it. So yeah, as Eric mentioned, we at ClearlyRated, we've been running this industry-specific research for more than a decade. I personally have been involved with it for almost that whole time, that whole run. So it's a core piece of research for us here at ClearlyRated. We use it to establish satisfaction benchmarks for our industries that we serve. We use it to identify emerging trends, and we use it to generally just study topics of importance to our industries. Topics of the day that we get asked about and that we ourselves are curious about as well. For the accounting industry in particular this year, we explored topics such as current and ideal service experiences of clients. We also wanted to dive into perceptions of technology, specifically in AI. Yes, this is another topic discussion about AI. We can't escape it. And we also looked specifically at buyer behavior amongst those that are buying accounting services. So a little bit of background specifically on the research. This was fielded last year in Q4 of last year. It surveyed almost 1,200 total buyers and users of B2B services. And of that 1,200, we have a subset of nearly 500, so 497 users and buyers of accounting firms. So you'll hear me use buyers, you'll hear me use users and clients. For this particular research, those are it's one in the same sample, depending on the question that we've asked. I might use a different phrasing, but these are accounting buyers, they are accounting users. So that framing is important to understand. And for the first time this year, ClearlyRated has made this research effort actually a global research effort. So we've expanded our scope from just the US, which we had been doing for that decade. We've actually included respondents from the UK, Canada, and Australia to try to get more of a global lens into the topics that we're looking into. And so we have both global results as well as market results. You will see that throughout this report, generally what we're showing is global results, but we have a few market callouts here and there where appropriate. A quick profile of our respondents to give you a sense of who these people are. Median age of the respondent was 42 years old. On the top right, you'll see kind of a breakout of respondent organization size. This is the head count or number of employees of those client organizations. So we see we have a pretty good distribution there. 40% are under 100 employee organizations, and then nearly 1 in 4 are at 1,000 or more or larger employee organizations there. Our top industries represented, we have a pretty good cross sample of a lot of different industries. There's probably 20 or so, maybe more, that are actually represented. But the ones that are most represented amongst our sample here are financial services, construction, software technology, manufacturing, professional services, and retail. And then top accounting services used. So this came from a question within the survey as well. We were curious about what particular services they're using to kind of give us a framing of who these clients are and kind of how they are interacting with accounting firms. So top services used, you can see there on that list on the bottom right: tax services, payroll, audit and assurance services, general bookkeeping, and then financial advisory. So that's a little bit of a background of profile of respondents. Let's go through our today's agenda. So as Eric mentioned, this is somewhat of a kind of a readout of that report that this research is built on. And we've organized these into 3 larger buckets, but you will see that there are 8 key trends that we found for this year's accounting client, accounting buyer. And we have, we have organized that into those 3. Sorry, I was getting a notification on my screen here. We've organized that into these 3 main sections here. The first one being macro trends impacting accounting clients. So the first trend being, buyers are concerned about the economy, and there's definitely some uncertainty there. So how that's showing up and how that will impact us going forward. Trend 2 is about artificial intelligence, that AI, they want clarity on and they want help with an understanding of AI and how it's going to impact them in their decisions and just in their relationship with their accounting firms, things like that. The second larger section is diving into the accounting buyer mindset. And some of the key takeaways here are buyers are seeking to de-risk their purchase when they're making these decisions, and they do that through a variety of vetting and social proof ways that we'll go into. Day one firms have the best chance of winning business. We will definitely talk about what day one firms means, because there's some interesting takeaways there. Buyers are vetting firms extensively online, and they're looking specifically for firm expertise in areas of specialization. So we'll kind of go into that as well. And then buyers and clients are placing a high value on thought leadership, and we will kind of go over some of the things that we can talk about in thought leadership specifically to have the most impact. Last section that we're going to go through is the client experience. It's Eric's favorite section, and we're going to talk about effective onboarding practices and why that's so critical in client satisfaction and retention. And then also we're going to go through some of the impacts of some of the negative service experiences, particularly service failures and cost overruns, and how that's impacting satisfaction with these with clients. So.
Great. So let's jump right in then. And I think that the biggest piece on this, on some of the macro trends here and kind of inside, the mind of the accounting buyer right now, what kind of stood out to you in the report? Give us a little bit of a sense of where we should focus.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a couple of key trends that we're really looking at. Accounting buyers remain concerned about the economy. Accounting buyers are not alone, I would imagine. I imagine everybody has some degree of uncertainty, but we have some data points to share with you all. 54% are rating the current economic conditions in their countries as only fair or poor. That question was particularly modeled off of a Gallup tracking poll question that is fairly widely used. So trying to get that particular insight for this audience was key for us. You can see we do have some market insights there broken down by country as represented by the flags below. But the key takeaway here is that 54% are only rating fair or poor. You might notice that's about half. So we've got half saying, not so great. The other half saying, oh, not so bad, a little bit more optimistic. Another key caveat is that only 8% of buyers are saying that the economy is currently excellent. So optimism is definitely not, sky high, as we might assume. But it is important to understand a baseline of kind of where our clients are coming from as they're making decisions. Further on this trend, we found that 39% believe the economy is getting worse in their country. So this again kind of plays at some of the anxieties and some of the fears and potentially some of the pessimism about where things are headed. You can see kind of the market breakdown there. There are some differences, but generally fall within the range there. So globally, 39% of our accounting buyers and clients, they're saying that the economy is getting worse. So what this also means is that we asked a few other questions regarding how this economic uncertainty might be impacting their internal processes, internal challenges, things like that. We found that nearly half are anticipating reevaluating their budgets on external service providers. So definitely a direct impact to accounting firms. And then we also have 41% that specifically say they are already focused on reducing internal costs. So they're already taking actions to reduce their internal costs when it comes to their practices around accounting. So most buyers are growing increasingly, wary of perceived risks when they have this low economic confidence, and they're more likely to restrict budgets. And we're definitely seeing that amongst this audience. So those movements are already happening. The other macro trend that we wanted to point out to you all is AI. As I mentioned, AI seems inescapable these days, and the accounting industry and buyers of accounting services are definitely no exception. AI usage is here for many, and it's projected to increase. So over half, so 52% of our buyers here claim to have adopted at least some AI into their internal accounting processes. There could be various points in the process that this specifically refers to, but this is just a blanket concept question to these clients. And so just getting them used to, getting a perception of how many of them are thinking about it or have already actively implemented or made moves down this path. When we found that over half already have. And then we found another 26% are actively exploring options for implementation. So you add those two together, more than 3 in 4 clients will have some sort of AI implementation in the near future. On the flip side, if we go to some the figures on the right here, AI implementation and its business impacts are hard to project. So it's hard to project for, you know, for us as researchers. It's hard to project for clients. And if you look at the specific findings here, we have 35% of all buyers that are not feeling confident in their organization's ability to use AI to solve accounting challenges. Now, a lot of this could be due to lack of familiarity, and that's definitely probably driving some of that uncertainty as well. But we do have just about half, or actually just over half, that have a blanket agreement that AI's impacts are being overstated. So again, you're noticing probably some trends right around that 50% mark, right? So we've got 51% that are saying that it's overstated, and then we've got, by nature, we have the other side of the coin that are saying, AI impacts probably aren't being overstated, and we need to be ready for that. So that just shows uncertainty. It shows that people are looking for guidance. It shows that there is opportunity to help and guide and help win some business as a result of being that guide on AI. Another interesting finding that we looked into is how specifically our clients are expecting the nature of their relationship with their accounting firm to change. Either improve or decrease based on implementation of AI at the accounting firm. So this was, somewhat of a theoretical question, but basically the idea is, as you can see here, 70% of our clients are thinking that, well, if we implement AI at the accounting firm, then our efficiency and speed of our outcomes better improve. That's our expectation. 66%, 2 in 3 are saying that responsiveness better improve as a result of this implementation of AI. So we have kind of this interesting scenario where we have some uncertainty about what it means for each client and their own internal processes, but we also have some pretty high expectations about what it means for you all and for this industry. There's some high expectations about how AI can improve and make their life better. And so it's incumbent upon us to figure out how to harness that and again, be that guide and make sure we're meeting those expectations in a reasonable way. So Eric, I'm going to pass it over to you to try to get your insights onto this. So I was wondering, you have spent a lot of time with this data as well, and you spent a lot of time with other client data. What stood out most for you for this year's research, specifically in the macro trends impacting accounting firms?
Yeah, it's really a story of uncertainty, and the things that are sort of outside of our control and outside of our clients and buyers' control are largely uncertain. You see a lot of people that think that the economy is getting worse, but then over half that actually didn't think that it was getting worse, right? The flip side of some of those statistics. So that's a really big number that's thinking that it's still not great and that it's getting worse, but it's also a really big number that think it's getting better. And so you have that level of uncertainty, and then you have this AI side where it seems like there's a really very real likelihood that we are both overestimating the impact that AI is going to have and maybe not fully giving justice to just how disruptive it could be in this industry, right? And so we're just at such the early stages. There's so much improvement happening so quickly. And I think in this type of an environment, what we have to look at is that everybody continues to kind of try to do more with less. And so if you're going to charge the same as you did last year, or you're going to charge more, which is what most people on this call are hoping to be able to do, as all of our input costs have gone up, we're going to have to find ways to do that more efficiently. And the last few years, there's been a lot of movement to some of the work being done offshore. And I suspect that in similar ways, if we look at this from a problem of how we get work done, we'll start to embed some of these smarter language models into the workflow to create efficiencies there as well. I think the thing that I would kind of remind this group of is that our industry can largely be a black box, and that's an okay thing, right? To basically have somebody assume that they got good value because they paid roughly the same as they have in the past, or they're comfortable working with you. I don't think we can make that assumption. I think we need to really show our work. And I have a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old, and they can get the right answer. And if they don't show their work, they don't get full credit. And the same goes for us. Like, we have to show our work. We create a ton of value for the organizations that we work with. And a lot of times we don't actually do a great job of capturing that value in their minds. And so I think that when we have economic uncertainty, there's more of a demand to prove the ROI than during more positive times economically. And so I think we just have to really dial in on that. I'd be curious what your take was, some areas that you felt like there were maybe more optimism than other areas.
Yeah, yeah, definitely agreed with all of your takes there, Eric. And specifically on the optimism and pessimism side of things. Yeah, we generally, going back to that chart, we generally see more optimistic and probably more higher expectations around particular aspects of the service relationship, things like speed and efficiency of work, as clients expect AI to likely manage a lot of those, kind of smaller and more repeatable tasks. They expect that efficiency gain. They expect that speed gain. That speed gain, they hope that results in cost decreases for them, but everybody hopes that. I do think that on the kind of the more pessimistic side of things, there seems to be a big sticking point for some clients around kind of the trust and the credibility and the reliability of just the general concept of AI and what that means. If you have AI doing the work for you, can I trust that to some degree? And so there's we actually have a data point here that 1 in 5 of our clients, we asked a specific question, they would actually expect trust and reliability from their accounting partner to decrease as the implementation of AI is increased. So there's kind of an inverse relationship to that right now. So a lot of that goes into, there's a lot of processes and improvements and things like that. And there's a lot of education of not only the accounting industry, the accounting clients and client buyers, but just the general public still about, what AI is, what it means, and is it reliable in the long term? And I know we all have our own kind of thoughts and opinions on that, but whatever, again, going back to guidance, whatever guidance we can give to our clients and our buyers is really going to behoove us to really educate them and let them know and leverage the strengths of that AI implementation and try to mitigate the downfalls of that trust and reliability trade-off. So let's move on, Eric, to the accounting buyer mindset.
Yeah, real quick before you move on, we do have a question from the audience that I thought was a really good one. And I'll just remind everybody that when we get to each of these 3 spots, we'll have time for questions at the end as well. But when we get to each of these key spots, if you have a question for either myself or Darreon, just go ahead and put it in the Q&A or into the chat. And we did have a question in there, which is the accounting has historically been a people-based business. How do we keep that focus while implementing some of these AI tools? And I'll let you think on your answer for a second. I'll add a couple things there, which is I think going to be really the nirvana, right? What people really want, what the customer and the client really wants is they want to have their accounting requirements, fulfilled the stuff that they need to do on their side as efficiently and accurately as possible. And they want to have the work done externally as efficiently and cost effectively as possible. And also, and so that leads to a largely, software based model where we have the ability. The way that Darreon, you and I have talked about it a lot is sort of, thinking about it as a freeway, right? And what people want is they want their project, whatever it is, to be on this freeway where they can choose where to go, how fast to go, and the technology supports them along those ways. But they want that freeway to have ample number of exit ramps. And those exit ramps are where they bring in the human element and the human aspect. And so what I would say is that we, ideally what we're shooting at is how do we build, utilizing technology, utilizing AI, how do we build in a technology path and journey for our clients that is really, really efficient, while also improving, utilizing that extra efficiency that we've gained to be more proactive, which is one of the biggest complaints that clients have, to be more responsive, which is also one of the biggest complaints, to take that extra step in communication to make sure that people really understand. That's where I think we want to aim on that piece of it. I don't know if you have anything to add to that before we move to that next section.
Yeah, not a ton of additional to add there, Eric, but I would mirror my brain went to the same kind of off ramp, the highway with the off ramp analogy, and I would definitely agree with that. Figuring out how we can support their expectations of increasing that speed and efficiency, but also offering those high touch point moments where if their expectations that responsiveness increases, maybe there's a process where AI is involved in a workflow and says, okay, at this point in the process, ping some sort of proactive, some form of proactive communication to the client that normally wouldn't have got it without that AI process in there, or with some sort of manual reminder on behalf of the partner or whatever. And so that will it's the off ramps. So it's managing where we leverage those high touch point pieces, and meeting clients where they're at and where they want that, but also viewing it as the highway of speed and efficiency and just better overall outcomes. So
Yeah,
I like your
I think
analogy there.
I think there's also, it's so different from client to client, right? And
Yep.
it's not just generational, although that's part of it. It is really set on those expectations. One last question before we move on. Is there any data on what clients perceive as the most effective ways to show your work? I know we want to move to this next section, so I'll just take this one, Darreon. What we have seen is, we did actually some research to try to understand, like, what kind of outreach do people want and what kind of communication people want. And what we found was that it actually kind of didn't matter. They just wanted outreach. They just wanted communication. And I think the same holds for showing your work. Even just, laying out every so often, hey, I just wanted to let you know, we explored this, and this. We weren't able to, secure any kind of tax credit here, but you are eligible here. And so we went ahead and took that. That should save you, about 15,000 on your annual bill, right? Just laying out some of those things are really, really important. Just the occasional proactive update. It's not big, but it rarely happens. Occasional proactive update that says, hey, just wanted to let you know, we moved your audit into the next phase, and we're doing X, Y, and Z now, right? Just letting them know, because what happens most of the time, what clients tell us, is that they do whatever they need to do on the front end, and then it disappears, and then they get some kind of a report, some kind of a deliverable on the back end, and there's nothing to give visibility inside. There's also nothing to show kind of what you've done on their behalf, even if it didn't turn out to be something of value. Getting credit for that matters a lot. So I know you're anxious to get into the buyer, so why don't you jump into the buyer data, Darreon?
Yeah, and we'll get just a note, we will get into a little bit more of what Eric was talking about there in the last section here, where we talk about some of the service failures and potential recoveries from that. So just FYI. So this is a section regarding tracking how accounting clients and how accounting buyers are finding firms, the steps they're taking, basically tracking their path along the purchase decision journey. And so we've got a few trends. This is our largest section, so we've got a few trends that we've pulled out here and grouped them together here. The first one here is that buyers are seeking to de-risk their purchase. It's kind of a simple concept, but the way that they're doing that is where the importance really lies. So when accounting buyers are vetting potential accounting firms, the most influential factors they're considering are laid out here. We've ranked these from most most selected as influential down to the least, and this is just the top 5 of a large battery of questions. But what you're seeing here is that reputation of key contacts, performance metrics, referrals from industry peers and professional networks, and we've got testimonials from clients, and then specialization in specific industries. You will see that specialization pops up throughout this report. These are the top 5 in terms of vetting, sources of information and basically influential power of, different ways that people can get information on accounting firms. What you're not seeing here are things that accounting firms are saying about themselves, right? So you're not seeing marketing and advertising from the firm. That's not on here. That was actually the least influential of the areas that we checked against. Blog posts and social media posts about accounting firms, and potentially using those things as influences as to why you should work for us. Not saying that those things have no value or that they're not influential at all, but they are by far the least influential when compared to these other things, of these other forms of social proof and larger concepts such as online reputation and testimonials and things like that. So generally, buyers are seeking to de-risk their purchase through a multitude of ways, and generally they trust what accounting firms are saying about themselves the least. Day one firms have the best chance of winning business here. So day one firms, defining that is, it takes a little bit of background here. So Google Research and Bain had done a study where they essentially looked at just a general B2B buyer audience, and they wanted to know that when these B2B buyers are going down this the decision-making journey, are they starting from somewhere? Are they starting with a long database of firms that they're thinking of? Are they just do they have no brand names at all in their brain and just kind of starting from scratch? And so they basically asked, do you start with a day one list of the firms that you would consider, and then take steps from that base point? And what they found is that in their general research, they actually found that over 80% did so. And of that 80%, 92% of that group ultimately chose a firm that was on that list. So what we have here is we ran a similar methodology to that, but we wanted to run it specifically for our audience here. And we actually found that amongst the accounting buyers, the proportion that are starting their journey with a day one list are actually lower. So 63%, still a healthy majority have that day one list in mind, but it is less than that original research had found. So that does present some opportunities in terms of getting on that list early, or influencing if you're not on that list. But what we did find is that amongst this group, if you are on that list, 96% ultimately selected a firm that was on their day one list. So we actually found that day one lists are less used for this particular audience, but they are more important and nearly universal in selection of a firm that was initially on that list. And then that number on the right there's typically the median number is actually 3 firms that are on that day one list. So clearly important to be top of mind and have that consideration set early in that client's mind. And we'll talk a little bit about how we can kind of influence that as well. Buyers are vetting firms extensively online, and they're looking for both expertise, so demonstration of the firm's expertise and areas of specialization. So first, we wanted to just get a simple sense of where people are starting their process. When they first start vetting or start their research process, where are they going? And we found that it was a nearly 50-50 split, but slightly more are using referrals. But 48% are starting online first. This really highlights the importance of managing that online reputation and making sure that your firm brand is strong and well represented early on in this process. What are they looking for when they turn to these online sources? We asked this question, and again, this was a larger battery of things they could be looking for. The top things that we found were firm expertise. So just general concept of, what does your firm specialize in, and how can it serve my needs? And then similarly, evidence of specialization in their industry. And then further below, you'll see kind of wrapping into those points of more social proof. So satisfaction ratings from existing clients and then testimonials from existing clients kind of round out those top 4 things that clients are generally and buyers are generally looking for. All of them are looking for at least one of these 4, and many are looking for multiple of them. And to kind of get a little bit more specific into the things that they're looking for and how they're looking for it online, we wanted to ask specifically about an accounting firm's website, and what concepts or pieces of information could be represented on a website, or general traits of a website that they find most appealing or most influential. And what you're seeing here is the most important aspects of the accounting firm's website that they are potentially considering, and then it's ranked by how influential that is in their purchase decision. So the darker bar represents the proportion of clients that picked that as the most influential, number 1, and then the lighter bar represents they selected that in their top 3. So you'll see the top 2 are, expertise is clearly displayed, and areas of specialization also clearly displayed. Some other things that are a little bit more typical are, easy navigation is after that. But then we also see ratings and reviews from clients that they've worked with. So again, wrapping in the using your clients to kind of sell for you, using those testimonials, using those ratings, rather than kind of, trying to do all the proof on your own. And you can see that they also, just general navigation obviously is important, and information on individual professionals obviously important as well. But again, I keep bringing this up: expertise, areas of specialization, make that front and center, make it clearly displayed, make it very obvious, what you do, how you can help, and you've already got a leg up in terms of what they're looking for when they're online. Trend 6 here, we have buyers and clients are placing a high value on thought leadership. So we asked a specific question on the influence of, what types of information could be presented to them as they're trying to make their purchase decision, in the form of thought leadership and just general industry insights. And then we also found that 86% of buyers say that that providing thought leadership for the industry is very influential in their purchase decision. So it behooves us all to really take this to heart and figure out how we can be educating our buyers and our clients, and how we can help them not only make their own purchase decision as it in using your firm, but also just general education topics, things like the top 5 that we have here that we've highlighted are cybersecurity and data privacy, tax reform and strategy, risk management, resilience, innovation and financial reporting, and then the digital transformation and accounting. Those were listed as from our audience as being the most influential topics that an accounting firm could potentially publish some thought leadership or educational materials on, and they would find that influential in that decision and make it more likely to work with that firm. So we'll have another discussion section here. And Eric, that was a lot to cover right there. So I kind of want to just take a step back and say the day one list. It's probably a new concept for some folks, but just curious about what do you think the implications are for that finding and how our audience here can kind of take that information and run with it.
Yeah, I think that that day one list dovetails with that specialization component in such a critical way. And you know, so I'll give you kind of the way that the data really suggests that people go about this, and it's kind of, if you can imagine a pyramid, at the bottom of that pyramid is, okay, which firms could do the type of work that I'm looking to have done, and that's sort of, you know, your expertise within your field. Then there's the second level, which is like, okay, they could do the work, they're experts in their field. What do they know about my field? What do they know about my business, about my industry, about my challenges that they can overlay on their expertise that they have? And then the third piece of that is, okay, now I've got a list of firms that I'm considering that I think are experts in what I need to have done. They know something about my industry. Now, which one do I have the most confidence is actually going to be able to deliver on what they tell me they're going to be able to deliver? And that to me is the place where in this industry we often have gaps, is in really telling that story of specialization and really going to market in specialized manners, and also going to market with credible evidence of our ability to deliver on what we say. And this is where the testimonials and the online reputation, the client ratings, all of that stuff matters a lot in that area. But to me, that day one list is so impactful, because what it basically says is that there's not much new business out there if you're not on somebody's day one list. The idea that 2/3 of the time there's a day one list, and if there is a day one list, almost all of the time, one of the firms that's on that day one list has a lead, a perceived lead that you can't really overcome, right? 96% of the time. We did this, by the way, in other industries. You know, Google found 92%. The recruiting industry, we found 93%. So it's very, very consistent and has been repeated over a couple of studies, which I think is, you know, gives me a lot of confidence that that really is true. And so if that's the case, then we have to really start to invest in that awareness part of it, and in that, you know, attraction marketing, as opposed to just relationship marketing on that side. So we have to, you know, our brand has to really mean something in specific verticals that we're targeting. I think that that's key. So one of the questions that came in as you were talking, Darreon, is, you know, we talked about metrics. And the metrics were one of the things that you know, were the most influential, along with like testimonials and things like that. And you know, the question came in, what do we mean by performance metrics? And I said, I know in the past what we've seen in there is, you know, things around client satisfaction or things along those lines. But do you have any additional insight on what performance metrics means?
Yeah, I think it was, I don't have the specific question up in front of me here, but yeah, it was a general blanket term. So, you know, it's somewhat broad, which may be kind of inflating, you know, why so many people are selecting that, but it generally was meant to be more on satisfaction levels, rather than things like financial performance. But some people potentially could have perceived it that way as well. So there, you know, there was some instruction within the question as well. But I'll try to find the exact wording of that question and get that out.
Thanks. So I want to make sure that we have time for this last section, which is the client experience. Like you said, my passion point. I don't know how I allowed us to leave that one to the end, but let's jump into what we learned about client experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, last but definitely not least is the managing the accounting client experience. So we wanted to really look at some specific touch point satisfaction metrics this go around, and we've known and we've heard from many of our clients that onboarding is such a crucial part of this part of the whole service relationship. And so we found that effective onboarding plays a critical role in client satisfaction and retention. So it's satisfaction throughout the whole relationship. It's not just if I'm onboarded effectively, I'm just happy at the beginning. It's if I'm onboarded effectively, I'm happy throughout. I'm much more happier, or much more likely to be happy with the entire service relationship. So um, some of the more common onboarding missteps are kind of outlined in this table here. They're actually outlined in terms of how impactful they are in basically comparing those that have experienced that failure versus those that haven't. So how we read this is this top line is 10% of clients noted that their accounting firm had failed to establish clear expectations during the onboarding period. 10% experienced that, and those that did had an NPS, a Net Promoter Score, on average 34 points lower than those that didn't. So what that tells us is there's a direct relationship between setting clear expectations and being more likely to recommend in the form of Net Promoter Score. We use that as a proxy for general satisfaction and customer experience as well. And that follows on the other lines of this table as well too. So you see that 19% are currently noting that their firm had failed to establish timelines or project roadmaps. And that impact on NPS was actually negative 28 points if they had experienced that failure. And then lastly, failing to provide updates throughout the onboarding process. 15% are experiencing that currently, and though that group is 21 points lower in NPS on average than those that didn't. And a lot of this points back to kind of Eric's point about sometimes it feels a little bit like a black box. And this is even interesting because this is at the point of onboarding. So we're seeing that there are some failures at the onboarding point where not all clients are fully satisfied with the expectation setting, with the establishment of timelines, things like that. And so we can always do a better job. And if we don't, there's definitely a satisfaction and retention cost to that. Some backup context for this, just as like a general blanket statement, which is helpful, I think, just to highlight the importance of just customer service in general. We looked at a study from Salesforce, and 80% of customers say the experience that a company provides is as important as its products and services. So failure to provide that experience is definitely a large risk and has negative consequences. And then additionally, that same study found that 88%, so nearly 90% of customers say that good customer service makes them more likely to purchase again. And that's regardless of other factors as well too. So just important, background to know. We all know customer service matters, but it matters empirically with data as well, and we see it all the time. So this is just kind of a summary of the service failures that we asked about. And this isn't just at onboarding. This is just kind of in general as a part of the accounting relationship and the service relationship. And what we found is that the most common service failure was actually an unexpected cost overrun. So note the key phrase is unexpected. It's not just that it was a cost overrun, it was that it was perceived as unexpected to the client. And that's impacting nearly 30% of our current clients that are saying that. You see some other ones there that are more common than we want them to be. Unanswered call or email, so 26% are experiencing that. And then, turnover of contact at the firm, issues with technology, things like that. But we're going to dive a little bit more into the unexpected cost overrun and why that matters. So again, 29% are saying that they've experienced these cost overruns that basically came more or less as a surprise to them when working with their accounting firm. And similarly to that table that I showed before, there's a negative, a pretty severe negative impact of that. So we have a 37 NPS as kind of our our benchmark for this year, just kind of the accounting industry standard, that was also derived from this research. And then that subgroup of those that experienced an unexpected cost overrun, they're actually at a 21 MPS. So that's actually a 16-point decrease from the general benchmark. And so if we were to actually run those that had experienced a cost overrun versus those that hadn't, that gap would actually even be larger. But you can see just versus the general population of this industry, this is a pretty negative impact to have these unexpected budgetary impacts. And so so that's the data. And Eric and I have some things to talk about around that. So, Eric, I'm curious on your key takeaways from this year's research into client experience in general in the industry.
Yeah, I think that the cost overrun piece plays to kind of that sensitivity, actually ties in really nicely to where we started this around that economic uncertainty and more scrutiny on every aspect of people's budgets, which we're just seeing, from survey to survey to survey, we're seeing that come up more and more often as a part of this. And we had seen, costs come up. I actually did this analysis for one of our large accounting firms, and they said, well, it seems like cost is coming up a lot more than it has in the past. And so I ran an analysis and I saw that it was coming up about twice as often for them. And actually compared to the rest of the industry, it had increased by about 50% for the rest of the industry. So, not quite as much as it had been for their firm, but overall, we're just seeing cost listed in our surveys more, and in those big components of it, which I think are a real challenge. I just would encourage, before I've got a couple questions for you, Darreon, but if you have questions, this is kind of the last window here to get these questions in. We're happy to answer those as well. So, we're seeing people automate their survey programs more. They're gathering feedback throughout that client life cycle. What are some of the lessons and best practices, that you've seen there, Darreon, from your standpoint?
Yeah, it's a great question.
I'll give you a couple, I guess, on my side, and then maybe
Yeah,
add to it. But the biggest thing that we're seeing, that I'm seeing, is really a focus on understanding the key points in that journey. So we know from all of the research, and actually I think it's your research that has shown this to me, that the relationship is most susceptible to change when we have turnover of a partner, whether it be retirement or something along those lines. M&A. So if we're acquiring a firm, that's a point of inflection that tends to get a lot of scrutiny that we want to have maybe additional touch points in. Certainly new client onboarding as a part of that, but really understanding how important it is to understand when somebody's rating you and the impact that that's having on their score, not just that piece of it. And I'd be curious if you have anything to add to that.
yeah, absolutely. And leveraging those successful client stories is also just so important to that whole piece too, right? Like knowing when and providing proof points at all those different points. And specifically, we have data that says the onboarding is crucial. And if you misstep there, then it's a big pain point, and it's a really hard recovery to make up for it. But we also know, to your point, Eric, that throughout that life cycle, it can't become a black box.
Yeah.
And we see that time and time again. And we actually see those that have the highest communication, driver scores, we call them, average ratings about how they rate their accounting firms' communication levels and consistency. That usually and typically is the largest swing in whether there's general satisfaction or general dissatisfaction. So the touch points are crucial. It's key to start on a high note, but it can't just become a black box and then just be here's the beginning and here's the end, and we don't know what happened along that journey, because it doesn't serve either party well. You don't know where the service failures are happening if there's a black box, and the client doesn't feel like they have a voice to let you know as well.
Yeah. We do have a question from the audience. I'll let you take the first stab at this one. And it is, with it being a challenge to recruit and retain internal staff, how is that impacting the client experience?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's probably, you're probably seeing some of that direct impact in why some, communication scores might be a little lower, or we might be seeing more service failures, or even things like we talked about, like with the cost overruns, right? Like maybe cost overruns are happening because, or the unexpected nature of a cost overrun is happening because people, at the accounting firm are scrambling and trying to fill multiple shoes, and are unable to be more proactive with their communication and with their, potentially budgetary and cost changes that they normally would be providing. So absolutely impactful. We don't have I will say we don't have any like hard empirical data as a part of this research about that direct impact. But Eric can attest that we see the ramifications of, tighter budgets internally at accounting firms. We see that all the time with service failures, and so it's definitely not a unique problem, but clients don't often give you grace if that is a problem.
Yeah.
So
I'll add one point, which is, turnover happens. There's always going to be some turnover. What I will say is I would really think through and architect a process for that. And most of the time when I talk to people about that, I'll ask them, I say, well, what's your process when, somebody leaves? Oh, we got a great process. If somebody leaves, the person that's leaving, that has been one of the primary contacts on the account, they send a big email, they introduce the other person, they talk about how much they've loved working with them, and so on and so forth. And I'm like, great. And then what? And they say, well, and then, the other person will schedule a meeting with them. And what I would just ask you to think about is, like, in my mind, what I've just described actually makes me that much more sad that the person's leaving, right? Because I've gotten all the things that maybe I've grown to love about this person, this, effusive praise and maybe an inside joke and all these different things along this. And then nothing happens with that new person. And I would just argue that if you tweak that a little bit and you think of it as like, okay, what's a way that that new person that's taking over can immediately win some points, right? Maybe it's like, hey, I know we're going to get together in a couple in a couple weeks, but I just sent you a Starbucks coffee card, or hey, I saw that you're, that you are committed to Big Brothers Big Sisters. I just wanted to lean in and say that's a program that I've been involved with in the past as well. Like, find that connection point that actually gives them, a little bit of hope that maybe, oh, I loved working with Darreon, but maybe Eric's not going to be that bad, right? Maybe there's going to be some reasons to be excited about this new relationship. And so I would just really think through, what are you doing that's formulaic and that's expected as part of that process that makes the new person who's leading that account look really good? And there's a variety of things that you can do there, but give that some thought, because there's a natural down that happens, right? Because you're going from the known to the unknown. You have to train them about your firm, how you like to interact, all those different things. So try to find a win for that as well. But wanted to just kind of share that piece of it. I want to be cognizant of time. You can see here to download the full report. The QR code is on the screen again. Darreon, thank you as always. Your ability to kind of weave through the data and help it make sense to me is so valuable, and I really appreciate that. Thank you to everybody who had questions, everybody that joined the webinar today. Expect the recording and the slide deck to be available. The report is even more detailed than what we went through today. And please, if you have any questions, anything we didn't get to, reach out to us. We'd love to engage and make this a useful piece of research for you. Thanks once again to the Association for Accounting Marketing for sponsoring and helping to promote this body of research that's so important for the space. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.